Welcome everybody to Soul Speak. I am so excited today for two reasons. Number one, I have a special, very special guest here, Jill Carlisle, and we're going to be talking about family estrangement. So before I kick it over to you, Jill, I need to give you the most proper introduction.
Awesome.
Jill Carlisle is a 51-year-old musician turned educator and author. She has published a variety of articles and essays covering everything from family to feminism to the importance of the female voice. Jill holds a double master's degree in English and creative writing from Southern New Hampshire University. Currently, Jill is an adjunct professor of English composition and literature at Eastern Florida State College, located in Cocoa, Florida. She mentors young writers all over the world through her virtual online classroom called Mrs. Carlisle's Classroom. Jill's first and forthcoming memoir, Finding 50, is slated for publication in the fall of 2021, which I can't wait to read. She is a native Floridian and resides in Melbourne, Florida, with her and her husband and her 3 fur babies. Yay. You can find Jill at finding_50 on Instagram and jwcarlisle.com. Welcome, Jill.
Yay!
Yay! I don't have any
happy.
sound effects yet.
Okay, we can make them.
Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And before we get into the topic of family estrangement, I just wanted to put forth some intentions today for our conversation. Family estrangement is a topic that is taboo, unfortunately, in our society. And with these taboo subjects, what I find is that there is a lot of isolation. You know, taboo subjects wind up polarizing those who are a part of the issue, unfortunately. So it is my intention today in this conversation with you to have a space that is open for people who are suffering through family estrangement, who have made it through family estrangement, and to know that we're not alone and that there is a life within that. So I welcome your perspective and insights, and I look forward to having this wonderful conversation with you. So welcome, Jill. That was a long ass introduction, but
Thanks, Rachel. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm honored to be here too, by the way. I'm just honored to be here to speak with you because I just love chatting with you, and we just made this connection, and from that connection it's just grown, and even in the short time we've known each other. But I'm happy to, I'm happy. I'm happy to discuss family estrangement because, as you know, I've walked down that path and I'm still walking that path.
Yes.
And it is
so let me just bring a little bit introduction into this as far as how Jill and I know each other. We're in a writing group together, which is just a blessing of an experience. And Jill, I've read portions of Jill's book, which blew me away. And she's read portions of her book within the group. And there are traces of family estrangement in as a part of the book. And this touched me so much because I've been experiencing family estrangement now for over 20 years of my life. And there are many different cycles of it. But yes, I hadn't found anyone that I could really talk to it about. So I will let you, Jill, discuss or introduce what you would like to talk about family estrangement and parts of your book.
Well, I would say, and I really didn't think about this until you and I started chatting about doing this podcast, meaning I really went back and kind of reflected on my book and what I've been writing about, and really the core, the centerpiece of the first half of my book, which is the climb, my childhood. The second half of the book is the comeback. But the first half of the book, really, the center piece of it stems the pain, all of that stems from the family estrangement. And after after we had it, we had a discussion last week, and I really reflected on what we talked about, and I thought, man, it's really all about family estrangement. My entire life has been estranged from my family.
Wow.
Until recently, until about last year. My sister and I had been estranged for, and as you know, just to give listeners a little bit of background, my siblings were basically 20 years older than me. My brother was 20 when I was born. My other brother was 19, and my sister was 16. Unfortunately, both of my brothers passed away. My sister is still alive. She's in her late 60s, and we were estranged for pretty much most of my life.
Wow.
There was a lot of jealousy that grew from my birth. And it created a lot of anger and resentment, which resulted in estrangement. So the result of that jealousy, the result of that resentment, the result of the anger was estrangement. And so my sister and I, and there's a lot to unpack there. We won't go into it, but my sister and I were estranged and didn't speak. She wanted zero to do with me. And then about a year and a half ago, she wrote me a letter, and she found me through one of my other, through social media. She found one of my other relatives, and she reached out to them and she said, "Can you get Jill's address?" And so she got my address and she wrote me a letter.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty, it was very emotional.
Wow.
And this is almost 30 years of not speaking.
Wow.
Not speaking. Yeah. And because everyone in our family has passed, has died.
Wow.
We're all we have left. We're it.
Wow.
So she had a change of heart. And I mean, I've always loved my sister. She didn't want anything to do with me. And so when she sent this letter, I prayed about it, and I wrote her back, and then we started texting, and it was beautiful. And then the first time we'd actually heard each other's voices in 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really powerful. And then 3 weeks later, my husband and I drove from Florida to Arkansas to see her.
Wow.
And it was very emotional, but very good. And now we get to be sisters.
Wow, Jill.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. What I wouldn't say enjoy because of the subject that we're talking about, but what I can appreciate about any given issue is that whoever's going through it has a different perspective and experience. So hearing you talk about 30 years of not speaking to a sibling, and so many of the family members are no longer around, that's not something that I've come into contact yet, but I mean, give it time. So what would you say, because you expressed that a lot of the issues that you've been going through have been because of family estrangement, what would you say, how has it colored your life, basically? Like,
Oh,
what are the areas where you're like, I don't know, I wish I had this, or I can go into my own and not project on you, but yeah, let me ask you that first, and then I'll go into
well, I
mine.
wish I had a family.
Mm,
I wish I had a family.
mm,
Um, that is the missing link. That is the missing part of my soul,
mm,
is that estrangement from my family. And now they're gone, and I don't have an opportunity to heal with them.
mm,
Um, I was very different than my family. My
mm,
parents raised my brothers and my sister in the late 50s and early 60s, and then had me in 1969. And I am a free spirit. I
yeah,
am a creator. I am an artist. I'm a musician. I'm a
yeah,
writer. I don't fit inside of a box
yeah,
of to-dos, of this is what you're supposed to do. I have never followed the rules.
yeah.
And on some levels, that's awesome. In
Mm-hmm.
other levels, it's been hard,
Yeah.
because when you are in a family that doesn't approve of you because you were born,
Mm-hmm.
because that's really
Wow.
what it was. I mean,
Yeah.
my brother Larry, my oldest brother Larry, was so angry at my parents for getting pregnant.
Wow.
I mean, and this was something, everything that I'm saying, I have heard said
Mm.
to me by my family
Wow.
at some point or another. My brother was so pissed off, or angry, that he said, "How could you do this, mom and dad? How could you? Everyone's going to know what you've been doing. Everyone's going to know that you've
I,
had sex."
what?
Yeah. And
What?
it's funny. I've got the proof that he said this, because,
What?
yeah, when my father turned 50, I was 10 years old. My father turned 50, I was 10. And at my father's surprise birthday party, they roasted him. And my brother was like the MC. And he got
Uh-huh.
up and roasted my dad. And it's all written down. And I've got the manuscript. I've got the
Wow.
actual typewritten what Larry said at the party. So this isn't something that was just like hearsay, or that I
Wow.
think I might remember. It was my brother saying, "I remember I was so angry at mom and dad for coming home and telling us they were pregnant. And then when they were supposed to be raising or loving their grandchildren, they had a baby."
I don't even understand that.
Yeah.
Married couples, first of all, that's none of your business.
None of your business. Exactly.
Second of all, if they're not having sex, that's a problem.
Yeah. And my mother was 35.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You know,
That's
and
incredible.
yeah. And so, when I look now as a I'm almost 52. As a
Uh-huh.
52-year-old woman, I look back and I think, wow, who was the selfish one here? Who was the
Wow.
selfish one here? But that, Rachel, is where the estrangement began,
Wow.
from the
Being
outset.
born.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the outset.
Yeah.
From the outset. So when you ask me, how is it colored?
Mm.
It's never been colored. It's
That's your
been
life.
10,000 shades of gray,
Wow.
painted
Wow.
over and over and over again.
Wow.
And so I never knew what it was like to
Mm.
have a family. I only knew, literally only knew, that my life, and I didn't even know, we talked about the word estrangement last week. Remember, we
Yes.
talked
Yes.
about
I
not knowing that
appreciated
word,
that. Yes.
right?
Yes.
I don't think I ever knew the word either, because I just was living it.
Yeah.
I was just living it.
Yeah.
That's what my life was. It
And
was an
as
estrangement.
polarizing as the feeling is, because I picked this up about my own self, where I have been ostracized in my family,
Mhm.
but I also had to intentionally not behave like an ostracized person because I took that on as my own identity, where
You own
I
it.
kept myself out of
Yes.
other things. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And that is such a good point.
Hmm.
And I feel like I'm there now. I find that
Mm.
because I lived in that polarized, because they polarized me as a
Yeah.
child. Because
Yeah.
as a child, you really don't polarize yourself because you don't
Yourself.
know,
No.
right?
Yes.
Because you
It
don't
was
know.
just like, what is this strange feeling as
What
you
is
start
this?
to get older and aware of,
Yes, yes.
you feel
That's
left out of
exactly.
stuff
Yeah.
and the air is like odd when you're around,
Yes.
or
And
yeah.
and every, everything is off. And
Yeah.
I know, like, so when I was young,
Mm.
I sat and I listened to my family talk. They were hate filled. My
Wow.
family was hate filled.
Wow.
And I was not.
Mm.
The one thing they did do was
Mm-hmm.
they took me to church.
Mm.
God was a part of my life.
Thank
But
God.
I saw God differently than they saw God.
Mm.
I saw God as a loving God.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Jesus as the one who came around and helped those that couldn't help themselves.
Mm.
And so that was like my mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't understand why I was in this family with hate. And so I was very different and I rebelled against that hate. And they
Right.
didn't like that I rebelled against the hate. And
Right.
so then the estrangement grew out of my bucking back
Mm.
of their
Mm.
hatred of of anybody that was different than a white person,
Wow.
a white Christian.
Wow.
And I thought that's not who I am. That's not me. This is not, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand, like, I wanted my family, but I didn't like who they were. I didn't
Right.
like what they represented.
Right.
And so there was like all of these, I think, we talk about estrangement, but I think that there's so many layers to estrangement. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many ways that you can be
Strange.
estranged.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's
Yes,
not just,
ma'am.
it's not, it can't just be defined in one word.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much. I have to say, for your open vulnerability.
Absolutely.
It is a blessing to me. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Brene Brown.
Oh, yes.
Girl,
Yeah,
that's it, man.
she's one of my idols. Yeah.
Man, so the vulnerability, it is a thank you so much. I just wanted to say, because last week, yes, we were talking about family estrangement, and I appreciated that you said the term, even the term estrangement is within itself, it's ostracizing. It has a negative connotation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was thinking about like different phrases that I could like make it into, because I
Uh-huh.
have an issue with the word journey, by the way. I don't know, but I
Okay.
can't think of a better word than journey.
I
So,
know.
I was thinking family separation, a breach in family,
Ah.
family rift,
Mhm.
fragmented family.
Fragmented. It's funny that you bring that word up
Mm-hmm.
because I just used that word in
Mm.
my memoir as I was
Mm.
writing. And I remember saying, I was fragmented.
Yes.
Great word.
Fragmented, because fragmented, it takes into account both parties, as opposed to estrangement. I never thought about it until you said it, because it really is a new phrase for me anyway. But estrangement is like you've chosen somebody and you've exiled them, is how
Yes.
I think. But
Yes.
fragmented is we both have choice in this situation
That's
and
right.
we remain apart.
Apart.
So there's no like power dynamic there. I think in estrangement, there's like a power dynamic.
I agree with you. That's a great point. There
Mm-hmm.
is someone holds the power in
Yes.
estrangement.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That 100%. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So, living past family of origins. I have two more.
Ooh, I like that
uh,
one too. Yeah,
li-
that's good.
living beyond families of origin. Oh, I said that already. Living, oh, beyond. I said past and beyond. And the last one is choosing intentional families. So
Ooh, but
I
I love
really gave
that
this
one
thought.
too.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but have you found that now there's freedom in finding in building your own family? Like, and I don't mean family like you have to go get married and have children.
Right.
Family is there, and I think for me too, like one of the things that I had that really has helped me heal is
Mm-hmm.
that because I'm in pain. I've been really lived in pain
Yeah.
with not having a family, but then I
Yeah.
thought you can go there's so many people in your life, Jill, that really are family. Just because you're not related by blood, that doesn't mean you're not
Yes.
family.
Yes. Preach it.
You know, that
Preach
doesn't
it.
mean they're not family.
Yeah. So that is a great segue into really not really what I want to talk about, just another thing that I was thinking about because all of this has been great. So with my family estrangement, it's different, but I noticed that there are certain characteristics that remain the same throughout our stories.
Uh-huh.
So my family estrangement, I feel like also happened as a result of me being alive in the world, not even in the world yet. When I was pregnant with when my mother was pregnant with me,
Mhm.
because I can't be pregnant with my mother. Um,
Yeah.
um she got in trouble. Like
Okay.
her father was upset that she was
Ah,
pregnant,
yeah.
and she was 24 years old, so this is just like shocking to me. And
Yeah.
as the story is known to me, a group of her family members basically beat her for being pregnant. So I
Oh,
think I marinated in that, and I talk about that in my upcoming memoir. And I felt that energy from the time I was born.
yes, ma'am.
And my mother and her father, my grandfather, they were close, not what I would define close, but they were close for them.
Okay.
So I think that my mother, in wanting to please her father, took on his view of me,
Yep.
um, for
Yeah.
herself. And so I grew up in the shadows of my mother. I was always in awe of her, and I wanted to be in her presence and bask in her. And I remember maybe around the age of 4 or 5 I started asking myself, what's wrong with me? Because no matter what it is that I did, I couldn't get the type of reaction from my mother
Yes.
that I wanted. Like I wanted that love, and I was working for it.
You
Um,
always felt like you were working for it.
always, I was
Always.
working
It was
for it.
exhausting, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. But that became my identity.
Yeah.
And uh, I never got it, to be honest. I
Right. I get it.
never
Yep.
got any of the energy that I wanted, but any how can you say, any reaction was almost like hope that I would finally get what it is that I wanted. And that bled into so many of my
Oh,
other relationships, but I'm not going to go there with it. So
I get it though.
I was abused by my stepfather, sexually abused, because that created, it was a prime opening for him, because he had a daughter who really wanted to be loved. So I was
Mhm.
like, it was
Oh,
open
yeah.
season on
Yeah.
me. So that happened. And then I just really admire the bravery that I had. And I don't know where it came from to tell people in my school what happened to me. Well, that got me into foster care. Me and my siblings into foster care. And my family did not believe me. They
Oh,
believed my stepfather. So it was incredible. I haven't even begun to unpack the level of betrayal that I felt
oh,
when I came back from foster care, and the blame was on me. All until like my siblings went back to my mother's home with my stepfather, and
right.
I was casted off, is what it felt like, to my grandparents' home. So I grew up with my grandparents and my siblings, with my mother and their father.
Wow.
Yeah, until I was 18 years old. And then I got into a fight with my grandfather. I could do a whole podcast on that. And I will one day, but I got into a physical fight with
Yeah.
my grandfather. And because I grew up as not even an angry teen, I was an enraged teen.
But that enragement came from confusion, and it
Confusion.
came from pain.
Yes, absolute
It
pain.
came from a place and center of pain.
Yes, it did. And what I can appreciate about having been an ostracized person or the underdog is that I look at many situations from a viewpoint that most don't, because I'm coming from a viewpoint that most don't put out there. So in that enraged teen, was raised, or was born in me, an advocate for
Yes.
myself. Man, I advocated the shit out of myself.
Amen.
Oh my goodness.
Amen.
So once I embraced this power, because that's how I looked at my rage as. I appreciate that I had it.
Mhm.
Um, because then I knew nobody could do what they wanted to do with me. And there became the hugest problem with my family, because there was never an intention to discipline me. And I can say they probably didn't know how, to be
Right,
honest.
right. Yeah.
And we're in a family, which was incredible to me. We have strong personalities. So the
Mhm.
fact that you're trying to tame like,
Ain't gonna work. Yeah.
it's not possible. I've come forth this way. So we clashed a lot because I spoke up. So as the years grew, and my mother, I know I'm a trigger for my mother. I know it. And
Mhm.
we were talking about a post last week where it talked about maybe your issue with your child was never about your child, the
It was
relationship you had with your
yes.
child, but the
Yep.
relationship you have with yourself.
Yep.
My mother, I know that for sure.
Yeah,
I'm a trigger for
exactly.
her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
she's not a person who has ever worked on herself in a way that I've seen. I'm not her, so I can't speak, but as far as doing like the deep work and understanding your deepest feelings,
Yeah.
no. So whenever she sees me, it rises. One of the biggest things I know is guilt,
Oh, yeah.
because later on, she did learn what my stepfather said, that he actually did what he did. So, and this is when I was 18 years old.
So
And
she did learn and she did acknowledge it.
she did acknowledge it. She told me
Okay.
that he did say it. And at that point, she told me when I was 18, I couldn't be more angry. I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I told you what happened.
And you didn't
So
take care of me. You didn't
exactly.
protect me.
Exactly. So I believe where my mother is, like when she sees me, this is what she sees. So she cannot see me.
Right.
So whenever we've ever come into contact with each other, because I love my mother, but
Yeah.
I'm also a speaker of the truth
The
as
truth.
I
You stand
see
in
it.
your truth. Yeah.
Yes. So she would take whenever I wanted to talk about a subject as an attack. And so that's where our estrangement, like it completely took off in a volatile way. At one point, I didn't speak to my mother for 7 years.
Okay.
I got married. I did not tell her that I got married. We've had intermittent contact. When I lived in Jamaica, I went to move to Jamaica with my now ex-husband. But when I was coming back, she is the one who paid for my ticket. And I have to say, that was a miracle.
Yeah.
But since that, we've been estranged again because there's no respect where my mother is concerned because she's so triggered. And I'm like, hey, lady, I'm grown. I'm a grown person. And the way that you treated me as a kid will not fly now. And I literally told her this. And for her, I don't know, like I'm not an extension or my own person. As she sees me, she can do with what she wants.
Well, so she's still seeing you as a child.
And I'm like, hey, lady, you cannot yell at me. You must respect me. No relationship is important enough for me to take disrespect from. I do not care from who. So we are estranged. And then I did something a couple of years ago that I will never do again. I tried to put together like a family intervention. And one thing I've learned, unless all parties are ready to do an intervention, absolutely do not. Number one. Number two, it was not my place to do an intervention because I'm the party that's extremely harmed. So what happened out of that is a further rift between my siblings and I. And I can't say what's going on in their minds, but I've received mixed messages, but I've seen not mixed messages in action, mixed messages in words than from action. And as my healing grows, because I'm healing from I'm recovering from bulimia and a host of many things, I'm like, yeah, mixed messages don't work for me. So what this looks like is how I'm gonna treat it. So like the on and off cycles with my siblings, I was like, oh, I'm not doing this. We're in relationship or we're not in relationship. And I've just chosen to just remain out of relationship because I'm not going there. So that's my long story about estrangement. Family, or choosing my own family of origin. So yes, it is freeing, because that's the question that you asked. Isn't there something freeing about choosing your family now? And yes, but I will open up the floor for you to speak because I've gone on and on.
Oh, so no. Thank you though, because to be able to talk about this and write about this and revisit that. It's brave. Like, we're brave. We're freaking, you and I, we're brave.
I agree.
And there are other women out there that want to be brave, that want to do this. And I think that women like us get you the space that you're providing here and the conversations that are happening in your podcast, they're important, and people will hear it, and other women will be able to come to terms with their own bravery and saying, listen, I too am going to stand in solidarity with other women that have been through these things and come to terms with my own, because it's freeing. Is it painful? Yes. But it's freeing. And you're brave. And the more I hear you talk, we have so much in common. There's a commonality. There's a common denominator is what it is. There's a common denominator. Stories are different. But the underlying feelings, underlying pain, the underlying abuse is so similar. You know, we talk about triggers and estrangement and triggers and our moms being triggered. And my mother and I, My mother and I were estranged multiple times during my life, her life. She's no longer alive. She died alone. Let's see. She died about, guess it's been 12 years now since she passed. And um, she really did some pretty horrible things to me when I was a child. I mean, you heard kind of just from my reading yesterday, a little, but that was only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that was something.
You know, and it wasn't always what she physically did. It was the things that she said. And you know, the things that stick. And when you're a child and somebody tells you something or you hear something, it sticks with you because you're formidable, because you're a sponge.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're physically abused like you were, it sticks. When you're emotionally and mentally abused, it sticks. When you're both, it sticks.
Yeah.
All of these things stick, and they become this big mounding pile of lava that eventually comes to a head and implodes.
Yeah.
And my mother and I, she really did some awful things when I was a kid that nobody knows about. And what she would do, what my mother would do to me is but I loved her. I'm like you, Rachel.
Yeah.
I loved my mom.
Yeah.
I loved her. But God Almighty, it was work.
Yeah.
It was hard work. It was work to love her, and it was work to try to get her and my dad and the rest of the family to just accept Jill, to just accept me for who I was. Because there was nothing that I could do or nothing that I could say that was from my own truth that satisfied them.
Yeah.
And then the fragmented parts, right? Fragmented parts.
Yeah.
That's where that's where we get fragmented.
Yeah.
It's in the misunderstanding and unaccepting of one another.
There's the unaccepting, but there's an aspect of control there.
Control
is what I think is the biggest issue, is like, I cannot be myself because what I am scares you for whatever reason.
Yes.
And
what I am scares you.
Yes. So you are trying to mold me in a way that you understand. And if you can't, you're going to make me feel wrong. So for me, I left. I used to chant when I was 12 years old. I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get out of here. That is what I read to escape, because I knew I didn't belong. But then there is that whole part of me that I used to hate, and I'm working on. There is always a longing for that same family that you hate.
Like I was going to bring that up too. It's like you long for them. But I think what we long for, Rachel, isn't them. It's an idea of them.
It's the fantasy of them. What I wish.
My wish. Because just as they can't change me, I can't
change them. But I looked at my mother for years as the mother I wanted. So yes, everything that I did and wished and fantasized about was what the type of mother that I wanted. And it was so hard. I don't know. I think in my 30s, I saw my mother for who she was and not what I wanted to see her as. And wow, that was such a, because again, my relationships with men were that's what painted that picture.
Absolutely.
At men as who I wanted them to be, not who they were.
I had a fantasy my entire life of just being loved and being accepted. And it really, and you know, my mother told me that the only way that I would be accepted in society was if, you know, if I had a good marriage and a husband and children. And those are the expectations. And you only find value. You're only valuable with the man that you're, by the man that you're married to,
Right.
and it was like, okay, I but I searched, sought out the wrong men
Yep.
because I thought I could change him.
Yes. Because you've
Because
been
why
trying to
not?
change your mama and your family.
That was learned
Yes.
behavior for us, Rachel.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
think about what we saw.
Yeah.
All we saw is people trying to change us.
Yes.
So if that's what we learned how to do, that's what we were trying to do with everyone else.
Yes. Yes.
And it took me 50 dang years to figure out I can't change no one.
Man. And
Sure as hell no one can change me.
I don't know about you, but I truly, that message set in stone for me during COVID. That's when I really understood. I was like, nope, I can't change anybody, and I'm not going to try to change anybody, as painful as it is. And I went through a literal grieving process.
Oh yeah.
Because never before had I accepted that what I wanted was not the reality. And that is a hard,
that's painful to hear.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've been there too, but I don't know that I really identified it as that. Because yeah, when that reality hits, because I think you and I are the same in that we're fighters, man. We will fight back. We don't fight back. And when we get to that place where there's just no more fighting
nothing
back,
you can do. There's nothing.
Nothing. We lose control, right?
Yes. Yes.
And to lose that control is like, for people like us, for women like us that have been through what we've been through,
oh my God,
then we feel powerless.
Yes. Yes. That's absolutely how I felt.
But reshaping, rebirthing ourselves.
Yeah.
In midlife.
And what the hell of it. That was a horrible process. I don't care what anybody says about process. To me, process is horribly disgusting and ugly.
Yeah, it's ugly.
Yes.
It's real ugly. And, just like, it sounds like you too, from the family that you were raised in, like the family I was raised in, shame was used as a tool. Shame was used as a tool to manipulate. And I refuse, Rachel, to ever allow shame to manipulate me as a woman ever again.
Yeah.
And I want to share, though, I do want to share this because I think it's something, I think when we talk about estrangement, story that I have about my mother, I don't know if I feel like it is an important one because we really have to think about, knowing the personalities that we are. And there are other women that many millions of women that have the personalities that we do, because really at the end of the day, we are the most powerful. God made us so amazing.
Yes.
I mean, we really are. At the end, we really are amazing people.
Yeah.
Amazing beings, I should say, women. But my mother and I, like I said, we were very estranged off and on in our life. And my father died in 2004 and from emphysema. And then, right the year before that, my mother had a heart attack, a quadruple bypass, and a stroke.
Wow.
And I won't even get into that story, but but it caused congestive heart failure. And so when you have congestive heart failure, especially from a heart attack, and you still don't take care of yourself, and you don't eat the right things, and you don't take care of your heart, it's like, we can't function without a strong heart. So my mother, after my father died, and they were married for 56 years. And after my father died, she and I were close, but you talk about mothers being triggers. My mother was a trigger for me. My mother, and I, and sometimes I feel like I'm a trigger for my daughter. Well, but it's like I said last week, I think that estrangement or fragmented families really are generational. I think that it's generational.
So yes.
So what my daughter saw, she was conditioned to.
Yeah.
We won't even get into that right now. But so my mother and I, lived together for a while after my father passed away, and everything about her pissed me off. Everything.
Yeah.
And she was sick, and I had to take care of her a lot, which was fine. And towards the end of her life, and there were a lot of things that she did to me as a child that stuck with me, that were never talked about, that were pushed under the rug, that were never brought to the surface, ever, but that stayed deeply rooted inside of me.
Yeah, it's there.
And I was pissed and I was angry. And one day she said something that really hurt me. And it was a big trigger. And she never stood up for me. And that's what it had to do with. What she said had to do with something else that I felt she should have done. She should have stood up for me. And I exploded. I exploded on my mother. And she was sick. She couldn't really drive. She needed help to do most everything. And I went off on her, like horrible. And she says, I cannot stand you, Jill. And I'm getting away from you. I said, go, here's your keys, go, get out. And I watched my mother walk out the door and go to her car. She couldn't drive it. And sit in her car. And she called my aunt, and my aunt came and got her. And I didn't speak to my mother for a good couple of months. And then my sister, who was living in Arkansas at the time, she still lives there, called me and said, Mom has fallen and broken her hip. And I didn't know that my mother was going to go live with my sister. But anyway, she ended up from Florida going up to Arkansas. And when she got up to Arkansas, she fell and she broke her hip. Well, we know that when, a lot of times those broken hips are really leading to the end of life. They really just can't get. So long story short, my mother ended up having to get kidney dialysis, and she just went downhill from there. And so I never saw my mother again after that horrible fight, after those horrible things I said to my mother. Now, mind you, Rachel, they were all true. It wasn't that they weren't true. They were all true. And I had a right to feel that way. But I never got to speak to her again. I did get to speak with her, but I spoke to her in a state. She was gone. She was dying. She was in hospice. And she actually I'd spoken to her a couple times, and we knew she was going to die, and she was in hospice. And having to live with the guilt of the last time ever seeing my mother being so mean to her and saying the things that were truthful, that were true, that really did hurt me. But she wasn't even in a space that she could even, what could she do with that? Right? Right? Yeah. And the day before she died, we talked, and she was on her way. There's when you die, when you're going through those stages of death, she was right there and she said, she was talking to me, and then she goes, well, I have to go now, Jill. Your dad's here and your brothers are here.
Wow.
Yeah. And she said, you were just here singing to me. And she loved when I sang, because I was a singer. And she said, and Daddy said, it's time for me to go, and we're going. But I love you. And if you'll come back tomorrow, you can sing to me again. And that was the last I ever spoke to my mother. And she died the next day. Wow. And, I will say this. The estrangement, the fragmented parts after she was gone. And it's really hard, because I was really angry at her. I just wish that we would have come to some sort of terms to help heal some of that fragmented parts before she passed away. Because I think that that's really where estrangement really is hard, when it's really after the fact, it's like, so I think that's when you talk about estrangement, when I think about estrangement and my mother, you know, that's really been tough for me. It's really been a hard place for me to sit, is, you know, but I've had to learn how to forgive myself. I've had to learn how to forgive myself, you know, not justify myself, but forgive myself. And then there's the other part of me that says she needed to know those things before she died, right? Because there is that part. Like, why should we always sit with that pain for the rest of our life? Right. I really hate that it happened when it happened, but you know, that's the kind of pain that fragment and estrangement brings. How do we move past that? How do we fix that? How do we, you know, we can't go back and fix what's already been done, but what do we learn from that? And how do we shape that going forward in other relationships and internally? And those are the things that I ask myself, you know.
Wow, thank you for sharing that again, that perspective of, you know, having a parent that you were estranged from, and now they're no longer on this earth, and having had such a critical argument that your needs could not be met, and she was ill, so there's the guilt of that.
Yeah.
I can imagine how difficult that is, and I will share some parts of what that story struck up for me. um there is a there is a tension, I think, constantly within ourselves of what we are told is the right thing, whether it be society, social media, whatever the heck, TV, and what we know in ourselves to be true. So I think when it comes to difficult situations like family estrangement, that's the thing that has held me back anyway, because I've known what to do for myself, but because I have felt bad because it's not the thing that I'm supposed to do, or it's not the way that I'm supposed to feel, that's what has held me in prison, because I've been in purgatory.
Yes.
It's not if whatever, I believe the truth sets you free, because you know what to do after the truth. Like, it breaks something within you where you're no longer held in confusion.
Right. Or in purgatory, like you said.
Yes.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So, where for me, I would say, cursed my mother out like several times in my life.
I've done that too.
And I remember the first time after I did it, I felt so free.
Yeah.
I think I was something like 23 years old. And I remember years later when my sister told me that my mother cried, and like after that, and I didn't know, I felt the pain for her, and I marvel at the, I don't know if it's beauty, if it's bittersweet, that I cannot hate my mother. I find that to be so painfully beautiful.
It is, but it's also, Rachel, it speaks to who you are.
I cannot hate her.
It speaks to your core.
Yeah.
That's what it speaks to. It speaks to your core.
I
couldn't hate my mother either.
Hate her, but I think something deep within me doesn't hate her, because then I'd hate myself. I come from that lady. It doesn't matter what. I can't deny it. No. I look most like her out of all my siblings. I'm like, seriously, I gotta have her face.
Yes.
So it's like, just the constant reminder of that
in the mirror every day.
I can't hate her because I'd hate myself. So what had held me back from making a clean sweep or a clean cut is that That's not how people usually do it. People learn how to work things out with their family, or they stay in their families. Really, it's that they stay with
They
their family. It's
stay,
not that they
they
learn to work
settle,
things out,
they
because I have
settle.
seen
Yeah,
families, I have seen, they would rather remain in that dysfunction, which for me was it was no longer acceptable for
right,
me.
right.
So I've made the right and painful decision, but the right decision. But once I was clear about that, Iyanla Vanzant, I listen and I read about I read her books a lot, and
Uh-huh.
she talks a lot about being clear.
Clear.
Once I'm clear, the it doesn't matter how much pain I feel. Number one, I know the pain will subside
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
eventually, but I know I'm doing the right thing. So I knew from a couple of years ago with the final break for me, I'm like, I've done the right thing. I've overcompensated and done more than I should have. And at this point, I have to look after myself
Yes.
because I have not been doing that. So what I'm saying is I don't feel bad in having cursed out my mother, because she would have never heard it otherwise.
Right,
There was no open ground for any of it.
right.
And I advocated for myself. When I think about, like families, my family growing, or my family of origins having children, I also don't feel any guilt, because I'm not looking at it as a fantasy. The
Right.
way that the family is, I cannot function healthily within it. I can't.
Amen. Right.
So this is what, like, I remember speaking to my therapist, and she was telling me just how painful, because when you do get the chance to speak or talk or hear about family estrangement, it the goal, it has seemed to me, is getting back together with your family, and that shit has pissed me off.
You know what? That is, I think that when I, at the very end of what I just said,
Mm-hmm.
that was like, what do we do with this?
Yeah, it's
Because
like,
my goal at this point, Rachel, is not like, yes, I'm with friends with my sister now and
right,
we're
right,
not estranged, but I will tell
right.
you what, my goal
Yes.
is not, I don't want anything to do with the people I'm related to,
Yeah.
except for my children.
Yes. And that
You
is
know?
like, okay, like you said, what do we do now? I think that's enough of that is not brought into the conversation,
Right.
because for me, the best decision was stepping away. I can't do the work for these people. I'm
No,
not trying to do the work for these people, but there is a life after that. And that's what I have been working on. And that's also a big reason why I wanted to talk about this subject, because to know that there is hope after
yes.
this decision that has been made. How have I found hope? In my recovering with the bulimia, I go to 12-step programs,
Mhm.
and I swear to God, I started going to one, and I'm like, oh my God, I need this 12-step, I need that 12
You're killing me, Rachel.
I
Girl,
need
because I'm right there too. I need every 12 steps.
12 steps, like
Yeah.
12 steps. So that started a path for me of where I can find the type of support that I need. So
Mhm.
that's where family of a family of intentions, how I've been growing it. I've also had a few friends, because I looked around at my friends and that I've had in the past, and it's not the type of friendships that I would have intentionally sought,
Right.
because a lot of it was, growing up in my childhood. So it's like a friendship of convenience, or a
Yes.
friendship of having known each other, but not really sharing any values. So I knew I couldn't continue some of those friendships. I have had to really cut a lot of people
Girl,
off.
me too. Me too.
Yeah.
It's, and just
And
like you said, the whole word intention,
mm-hmm,
whether it's family intent,
mm-hmm,
a family of intention, or friends of intention.
right,
And that's kind of how it's been for me too. It's like, okay, I'm done just being friends with you because I'm supposed to be. I'm done.
right.
I ain't doing, there's no more supposed to be.
Yeah, nah. I'm
No
good,
more.
son.
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, I'm good.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's a freedom. There's a
Yep.
freedom in that.
Yeah.
Sure, there is a bit of loneliness.
Girl,
Right?
there's not a bit of lonely. There's
There's
a
a
whole
lot.
lot of lonely.
There's a lot of
There's
loneliness.
a lot
Yeah.
of lonely.
But you know what? At the end of the day, you're not hurting because you've put yourself in a situation that is not right for you.
In a compromising situation. Correct.
You're
Correct.
lonely because you are in a holding pattern, because there are other things that are going to happen.
Yes. Preach it, Sister Jill.
You know?
No, seriously. You are talking my life. Yes.
You know, and like I found it, I'm starting to find it. I found it, you know, the writers group. Becoming friends with you, spending time chatting with you, and how all of us are sharing our stories together.
Yes.
That's a very special group.
It is very special. It's very special.
Very special group.
Yeah.
And so you know, so now, you know, I do get, sometimes I say to my husband, I'm so lonely. I'm so lonely.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I go, it's not because of you, babe.
Yeah.
You go to work every day. You've got another life that you go and you do.
Yeah.
And I'm not complaining about my life, but I do work from home, and I have a computer screen, you know, 3 computer screens, you know, and sometimes I need the connection.
Yes.
The feeling of connection.
Yes.
But you know
I
what?
read something. I'm sorry to cut you, Jill.
No,
I wanted to talk about that loneliness, because I have been, number one, I've done a podcast on it, but I've still been very much looking into it. And I don't know what thing I read, but I started to really look into my loneliness. And I have at least connected that a big part of it is grieving. It is a sense of that deep melancholy that I've always pushed down. And when I let it come up, I feel like it is going to overtake me and drown me, to be honest. But it's a grieving. And I've started grieving it, and I've had some release, but some of that loneliness is grieving. Yes.
That is, thank you. Thank you. It's so helpful to hear that.
Yeah.
Because there is a grieving.
Yeah.
And you know, and we learned, like, I've lost so many people in my life. Like both of my brothers died. My father died within inside of 10 years. I think we lost 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we lost 6 people.
Wow.
And that's a lot.
That is a lot.
And it basically my entire family, except for my sister. So I've walked through the steps of, you know, I've had a lot of hospice. My son's father died. It's just been a lot. So I've had hospice in my house, and really trying to explain, here's the grieving process. Yeah. And it is a process. And it can take, it's not, okay, well, you start with step 1 and then you get to step 5 and you're done. Right. Because step 2 and 3 can take years. And we have to let ourselves grieve. Yeah. And you and I are such strong women. We can't control that, right? So it's uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable ain't the word. Yeah. It's like, and I honestly didn't know that's what it was, because this loneliness, I appreciate that you said you discuss it with your husband, because it has nothing to do with the presence of another human being. No, because I've been around many, even caring people, where it's that lonely feeling. I've had it since I was a kid.
Yeah, me too. Me
so
too.
It's a feeling I need to let rise. And
don't you think though, Rachel, too, like, I know now that was that feeling that I had, but I didn't know it then. Yes. And so I think there's also this other process we go through in this phase of self-discovery. And that, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, we could have 3 months worth of podcasts just on what we
seriously, it's true. Today.
It's not just us. There's so many people that feel this way. Yeah. And that's why this is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we start to scratch the surface.
Yeah, we do. And start to give permission. That's what I like
Yes.
hearing that a lot. Where for me, when I hear another person, I've learned a lot through books
Uh-huh.
and hearing people speak from when I was a kid, because I didn't really have a good adults around me to
Yes.
help me
Neither did
understand
I.
my
Get it.
world in a
Yeah.
healthy way. But the way in which I've learned it has given me permission to speak. And
Mhm.
so this is permission for others who need to hear it and need the comfort, because there's that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And there is hope. Just because you don't hear, that you can live past family estrangement, or you can make a choice to not deal with certain family members. All of that is okay. And
It
there's
is.
another side to it. I am still going through the process, but I am better now than like say the end of 2019. My heart was literally breaking. I know exactly why that phrase exists. When I from going through the process, my
Yes.
heart felt like it was breaking. Like I
Yes.
felt physical pain.
Pain. Yes.
Um,
So have I,
yeah,
because it manifests.
yeah,
You talk a lot about manifestation,
yeah.
but it does manifest. And I'll share with you too quickly that
Mm-hmm.
when I have gone through physical pain. I have,
Mm,
not knowing what it was, ended up in
yeah.
the hospital. I think I'm having a heart attack. And
Mm,
then, it, it, it because it's real.
yeah.
It's not just a mental state.
No.
It's a physical being.
Yeah.
And it's something that, listen, we're in this together. We can,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and when you know that you don't want anybody else to feel that,
Right.
but you also know that to stand alongside someone and to share the stories, because sharing stories and storytelling is healing.
Yes, that's really what's gotten me to feel more energy and hope around this particular subject, is
Hope.
actually opening my mouth. I researched it, and then I found the phrase, and I literally, you read your story, and I found so much after that. So,
Good.
yes. And
There is hope.
yes, I think human beings, we can make it through anything. We can
We can.
heal through
We're
anything.
resilient.
Yes, we can
We're
heal through
resilient.
anything.
It might knock us down, and the last thing the other thing that I'll share real
Okay.
quickly is that I've been on both ends of the estranged, right?
Mm,
Of the fragmented. Let's
mm-hmm,
call it fragmented.
mm-hmm,
I've been fragmented with my family that I was born into.
mm-hmm,
But being estranged and fragmented from them has helped me to understand the estrangement from my daughter. It was not my choice,
mm-hmm,
her choice,
mm-hmm,
and I accept it. I don't like it. It hurts
mm-hmm,
me, but I
mm-hmm,
want to give her, through her issues, whatever she's going through, I want to
mm-hmm,
acknowledge my role in it.
mm-hmm,
I don't want to do more than acknowledge. I want to stand in it and apologize.
mm-hmm,
But I also want to give her the respect that I wished I would have had. That it's okay to feel the way you feel, and I'm not angry at you for that.
mm-hmm.
Because that's important
That
when you're on.
is
It's so important. She
hearing
doesn't know
that.
that, but
Yeah,
she should know it, because I do what she asks.
yeah.
I do what she asks.
Wow.
That's
No,
important.
to hear that from a mother, because that's one of the things that drew me to you, is to hear the respect that you have of the decision that your daughter has made to estrange from to not communicate with you at this time, has been healing for me,
Good.
because it's the thing that I wish I would have had. It's that unconditional love. Basically, I'm not mad at you for doing what you needed to do, because at one time I needed to do something similar.
Yeah.
And I can just imagine my mother, I'm sure she needed to do something similar.
Yeah.
We grew up in a toxic family,
Yeah.
but I never received the permission. So receiving that permission is a beautiful thing. It's a great seal or cherry on top of the cake of something that you need to do. So I find that really healing. And just because I couldn't get it from my mother doesn't mean that I couldn't get it. So
Right.
I
Right.
really appreciate that.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad, that's my whole purpose of telling my story is that I can see both sides. I've been on both sides. And if there's any way I can help humanity and other people and people that I connect with and people that I care for, I mean, that's why God puts us in the places with the people that, and we just have to trust that that's what's going to manifest at the end of the day.
I have to tell you, Jill, your hope is already coming true. You have done this for me. So just to let you know, as you go out there more in the world and you share your story, I know in my soul that you will continue to do that for others because it has been already done for me.
Well, thank you. And I feel the same about you in our conversations and your light and the love that you bring to the group and just talking with you. And it's just, I appreciate you, Rachel. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate our new friendship.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think this is a beautiful note to end on. I would just like to give you the opportunity, Jill, to talk about your handles, mention your handles again, and the name of your book and anything else that you want to talk about so people can find your beautifulness.
Well, first of all, thank you, Rachel, for having me. I'm humbled and honored and just to be here with you and sharing this space. And I think what you do and what you bring to social media, to humanity is awesome. And I want everybody to know about you.
Thank you.
Because you're an amazing woman. But if you want to check me out and find me, I would love for you to follow me and I'd love to follow you back and get to know any of you. IG is finding_50. And then my website is I don't even know JW Carlisle, CARLYLE.com. And hopefully my memoir will be out. We've got it slated for publication in October. I'm holding myself to that. I am self-publishing it. I own a small little publishing company called Empowerment Publishing Group that I started in 2017. And the tagline is breaking the silence. And I do hope to, the whole goal is to illuminate the voice of every woman.
Beautiful.
And marginalized populations.
Beautiful, Jill.
So I'm working towards that as well.
So please go follow Jill. She shares a lot of light, a lot of insights. She has even taught us a class in writing in the writing group about how we can be more popular, I guess, on social media or present. Yes. So with that, I will let you guys know my handles if I can remember them. The first one is The Sassy Rachel, which is on Instagram, as I share my poetry. I'm a writer of many types. And you can find me also at soulspeak_podcast. I would love to get feedback and interact with you all. And I hope to have you again, Jill. Hopefully this is the beginning of conversations with us and beginning of conversations with my audience at Soul Speak. Well, nice talking to you, everybody. Hope that you found some insights. I did. And talk to you again next time. Bye.